Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are down to 8. Well, at least as of watching this, we will be down to 8 teams. As I'm recording, we're actually down to 10 teams in the 2025 NCAA Tournament. The early games have wrapped up on Friday night, and the late games are about to tip off. And that makes this a perfect time for me to go ahead and record because we're going to be breaking down the Saturday Elite 8 slate. We're going to break down both of the games, Duke versus Alabama and Texas Tech versus Florida. We're going to tell you everything you need to know about both games. So that way you can build some winning DraftKings and FanDuel lineups, as well as look at some potential player props and bets for these two games. Now, we are going to continue doing this for the rest of the NCAA tournament. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so that way you can be with us here for all of that, because we're going to talk about Sunday's games as well as the other games in the college basketball universe. Because if you are not aware, we've got the college basketball crown as well as the NIT coming up next week. And if DraftKings is offering contests, that we're going to be on here breaking it down. So make sure you subscribe so that way you can be here with us for that. Now, this has been a great time of year for us. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers. We only need 45 more. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please help us reach our goal. If our videos this NCAA tournament have helped you out in any way, please help us reach our goal and get to that 1,000. All right. We got two games to break down. And I got to say, like, with what I was talking about at the start of the week, right? With, there's no Cinderellas, there's no mid-majors left, but what we're left with is all teams that I don't want to say belong. I think belong is too strong a word, but all teams that should, quote unquote, be here in this round. We've gotten some great games so far in the Sweet 16. We're going to get some great games in the Elite Eight. And these two on paper, to me, look really, really fun. And that's going to make it fun to build DraftKings lineups, fun to build out parlays, fun to do player props on sites like Underdog. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm really hoping that we get some good games. So let's go ahead and break it down because we got two good ones to talk about. All right, so game number one is the battle in the West Regional in San Francisco between Florida and Texas Tech. KenPom has this one as being 81-76 in favor of Florida. That is a 157-point total. And believe it or not, that is the lower of the two games on the slate. Like, it's crazy. That's how good both these games should be, right? And the reason why the total is so high is because you have two really, really good offensive basketball teams. Texas Tech ranks 5th in offensive efficiency. Florida ranks 2nd. But the reason why it's not higher is because both these teams are decent defensively. Texas Tech ranks 39th. Florida ranks 9th. In terms of tempo, you kind of got a little bit of a contrast to styles here. Texas Tech ranks 268th. Florida ranks 62nd. But what you've got to remember with Texas Tech is pretty much exclusively in the NCAA tournament, they play teams that have been looking to slow it down. Really dating back to the Big 12 tournament, they played a lot of teams that are looking to slow the games down and not really speed it up. So this being a pace up spot does kind of make it a little bit more enticing to play some of those Texas Tech guys. But one thing I always want to think about, especially with small slates like this, when I play DFS or when I'm doing player props, is what is each team's pathway to victory going to look like, right? And so for Texas Tech and Florida, they're both like pretty big teams. Like they're not small. They're both really good rebounding teams. They're both teams that don't really turn the ball over a whole lot. Like it just, there's no real like super obvious pathway to victory among these two teams. And so to me, that makes it really interesting, right? So for Texas Tech, what might they try to do offensively? Well, the first thing you got to know is that this game is the one that is going to have the injury news that we're going to be waiting on, which is a good thing because it's the first game on the slate. Offensively for Texas Tech, they have really played their last two games through Darion Williams. He's put up 47 and 44 DraftKings points in both those games, took 26 shots in the overtime game against Arkansas, led the team in usage, led the team in shot attempts, led the team in scoring. Actually, correction, he did not lead the team in scoring. Another guy did. More on him later. The thing is with Darion Williams is they've been so content to run their offense through him in the last two games. And against Drake, I kind of get it, right? Like Drake did not have anybody to match up with the physicality of him. He was able to get in the lane and do his thing. Arkansas, on paper, not a great matchup for Darion Williams, but like nobody else really had a great matchup either except for JT Toppin, and he had kind of a weird game. More on him in a second. So the question is, are they going to continue to roll with their game plan of just, getting Darion Williams the ball and trying to let him get into the paint? I think there's a possibility that they can, especially considering Florida might be dealing with some injuries in the front court. Darion Williams, as the more of the power forward as opposed to the center, is going to be guarded by more of Hawk and Condon instead of Ruben Chignello. I don't really know how that's going to like play, a good or bad. Chignello's kind of a foul magnet, but Williams, he's a guy that should probably have a high usage rate. I'm shocked he's not above $8,000 on DraftKings. Honestly, judging by how they've played the last two games, I think there's a chance that Darion Williams could put up another 40 plus DraftKings point performance. There's a chance. The other guy you got to know about for Texas Tech is J.D. Toppin. Also had 20 points in that game against Arkansas. Dealt with a little bit of foul trouble early, but kind of got out of it later. Still had a double-double, 5 block shots, was able to get 45 DraftKings points for the second straight game. His usage has not been as high in the last 2 games, largely because they have been playing through Darion Williams as the 4 as opposed to J.T. Toppin at the 5. But like I said, that could flip this game. Toppin's going to draw the matchup more so of Chinyelu and Hanlockton as opposed to Condon and Hauk. So I don't really know what to make of who has the better matchup or who doesn't, but I do know that JT Toppin at $10,100, judging by what he's done, whole body work over the course of the season, is very intriguing, right? And you got to remember with these Texas Tech guys, I just saw both of Maryland's bigs a pretty successful day against Florida, right? Like Queen and Reese were pretty good in that game. It was, Maryland really that they just kind of just couldn't keep up with Florida's offense. It's not like Maryland's offense had a bad game. So I do think that you can really make the case for Toppin and Williams to both be solid plays in this one. What I was really interested in when I think you look at this slate as a whole, I think Cooper Flag is going to be super duper popular, right? And really, can you play a Flag and Toppin lineup? I think that you can. So I think that the purpose of Toppin is either to play as leverage off of Flag, right? Because I think everybody and their brother is going to play Cooper Flag, or you can do this Flag and Toppin build and make it a super unique build, right? But to me, that's kind of like what you got to think about in terms of Toppin. Toppin is not going to be super popular on this slate because of the fact that Cooper Flag is there right next to him, and everybody's going to play Cooper Flag instead. Now, for the rest of the Texas Tech guys, we got to talk about Chance McMillan. He is the one injury that you're going to have to know about. He is Texas Tech's best three-point shooter. He was outstanding coming into the postseason, and then got hurt and obviously hasn't played since. So the weird part about this is he was like supposed to play in the Sweet 16 game against Arkansas and then just didn't. They're not really telling us a whole lot about his injury, though. So I don't really know if he's going to play or if he's not. We're going to know beforehand. If he does play, I think he's a great play at 5,700. If he does not play, I think that Christian Anderson is a great play at 5,200. So the only problem is I think now we're a little late on Christian Anderson. I think if McMillan does not play, I think Anderson is going to be super popular. On my last episode, I actually made a slight case for Anderson because of the fact that he was still playing all the minutes. He was still taking a lot of shots. And in the Arkansas game, started hitting. He got some boards. He got some assists. He put up 33 DraftKings points, right? Like it was the shooting regression that he was due for. And he didn't even shoot all that well. So I think that Anderson sitting here at 5,200 is still a really good look. And I think that if McMillan doesn't play, I think Anderson is a really, really solid play. The other guy that I will mention is Texas Tech starting point guard Elijah Hawkins. Very poor from the field in that game against Arkansas, 1 for 7. But as is the usual with him, his peripheral stats were great. 5 rebounds, 5 assists, averages about 10 combined rebounds plus assists per game. That's what you're going to get out of him in a pace-up environment. I really do like the idea of that. One thing that does worry me, he's a little bit of a smaller guy. Florida's guards are not tiny. And I do think that could give him a little bit of issues, but it was not an issue for Jacoby Gillespie of Maryland last night. So I do think that this could be a decent spot for Hawkins as like a game stacking play, not as like a primary offensive option type of play. Now, after those 5, right? This is where it kind of gets interesting for Texas Tech. So Kevin Overton played a ton of minutes in the game against Arkansas. He would be a total non-factor if McMillan were to play. So if McMillan's in, scratch Overton, right? But he played 37 minutes in that game, put up 23 DraftKings points. I think he's a really solid value play if McMillan is out, because basically Kerwin Walton was the guy that had the super hot first round of the NCAA tournament. I told you guys not to chase it against Drake. I told you guys not to chase it against Arkansas, and he's put up a combined 8 DraftKings points since then. He kind of got phased out of the rotation in favor of Overton. So if McMillan's in, he might not see the floor at all. If McMillan's out, he's still probably going to see more minutes to Overton. So Walton is not going to be in my player pool at all. Federico for Texas Tech would play a lot of minutes if one of the bigs were to get in foul trouble. Texas Tech. So I do not mind the idea of playing him as like this kind of leverage type of play in GPPs at 3,700. He's a decent fantasy point per minute player, in all honesty. So if you were to get foul trouble, I think you're probably going to get value out of him if one of those guys gets in foul trouble, is what I'm trying to say. If you don't get foul trouble, you're probably not going to get a whole lot out of him. All right, now the Florida side. So let's break this down first. Florida has the most impactful injury on this slate. It is Alex Condon. So Alex Condon, earlier in the month of February, he had an ankle sprain. And big guys in ankle sprains don't mix at all. Big men in basketball and injuries that are on the lower body are like the worst thing that can happen to you. Foot injuries, ankle injuries, it's just bad, right? So that's why he sat out for like a 2 full weeks, got right, and was playing really well since his injury, right? But all it takes after you have an ankle sprain is to roll it once and you're right back in the same boat you were in. He was able to come back in and finish the game against Maryland after he rolled his ankle, but he only played 14 minutes total, was not all that in those 14 minutes, especially after he came back in. So he sat out of practice today, Friday, and he had on a walking boot. Y'all, I generally don't think that guys who wear walking boots play the next day. However, it's an Elite Eight. It's for a chance to go to the Final Four. So he might try to give it a go. He might not. He's probably not going to make my player pool regardless, because even if he does go, what if he's not full strength and he does like a Willis Reed and comes out and, all the heroics and the theatrics plays 7 minutes, right? Like that's not going to give you anything in DraftKings. If he is out, what you're going to see is you're going to see a return of Thomas Houck. So before I continue, apparently, been watching the broadcast this March Madness. Apparently, I've been saying it wrong all season. Apparently, it is Houck. I have no idea how that is pronounced. Houck. I don't know how you get a k sound out of a GH, but I'm going to say what the announcers are saying. It's Houck. All right. So Houck came in relief against Maryland, played 32 minutes, put up 35 DraftKings points, right? That is what he did when Condon was injured. Like, you look at his stat lines when Condon was injured, 39, 47, 39, 18, 39 DraftKings points. Like, he was just an elite option game in, game out when Condon was injured. And he's going to go back to being that if Condon were to miss this game. So to me, if Condon sits, Houck is like a lock button play at $6,000 to me. If Condon sits, also, you're going to need to get more minutes out of Ruben Chinyelu. So as I mentioned earlier, he is very much a foul magnet. I feel like every time I watch Florida, he's in foul trouble. And that generally limits the minutes that he plays. Against Maryland, he was really needed to play more minutes with Condon not in the game. Really played without fouling for a lot of them. Like, he got in early foul trouble, came back in the second half, was managing his fouls and still fouled out in 24 minutes. But in those 24 minutes, he put up 19 DraftKings points. Y'all, I don't know why he is only $3,800, because especially with Condon out, they're going to need to get big minutes out of him. And I really think he's a really solid play down here at 3,800. Micah Handlockton is kind of like the big variable in all this. He came in the first half and like instantly got in foul trouble against Maryland. Like, it was literally like the meme from The Simpsons of the guy entering the bar, putting his hat down, and then leaving the bar and picking his hat up. Like, that was how long he was in the game. And I kind of think without Condon, he might need to play more minutes. And that would be super interesting as a punt play at 3,300. And oh, by the way, Sam Alexis also was a guy that was a part of their regular rotation earlier in the season. I mean, nothing huge, like mainly blowouts was what he got run in. But before he was injured, he was a part of the rotation. Now, if Condon were out, could Sam Alexis see some minutes? I think that's a possibility as well. So this Florida front court, if Condon is out, like officially out, you're going to get a ton of DraftKings points, a ton of minutes played out of Houck, Chinyelu, Handlockton, and Alexis. You're just going to, right? If Condon is in, I'm still going to be playing those guys, because I still am not sold that Condon's going to be his normal 30-minute-a-game self. Now, on the guard spot for Florida, they're really simple at the guard spot, much simpler than that breakdown. Walter Clayton Jr. is their best overall player. He's their usage leader amongst guards. Against Maryland, he didn't really look for his own shot a whole lot, which is what led to him only scoring 22 DraftKings points. I really thought we would get kind of a price down on him. I really did, but I'll still play him at $8,200 in this environment against Texas Tech. I see him having success against Texas Tech's guards, who are not very big. And I think this is a pretty good spot for him all around at $8,200. Just super like consistent, just easy, palatable click for Walter Clayton Jr. And I feel the same way about Elijah Martin. Like, he's a guard that's going to put up a lot of peripheral stats. He's a great rebounder from the guard spot. You really saw him up his rebounds with Condon out of the game as well against Maryland. So to me, that could be a little bit of an angle to play is, hey, like with Condon not in there to grab rebounds, these other guys are going to have to get rebounds as well. Maybe Elijah Martin could be a beneficiary of that, and it certainly was against Maryland. So he's back-to-back games over 29 DraftKings points now, and I really do think he's a solid play. He was a big play for me on the Thursday night slate in that Maryland game. And then Will Richards down here at $6,200. He's a little more shot dependent than Will Richard, but also recently he's really upped his peripheral stat game. He's had at least 7 rebounds plus assists in every NCAA tournament game. That's pretty solid. He's also shot at least 50% from three in the last two. So another just kind of solid, easy click amongst the Florida guards, like Clayton, Martin, and Richard. They're all just like very reasonably priced, very reasonable clicks in a reasonable like spot, right? Like I had no problem playing any of them. Are any of them going to elevate to core play for me? Probably not, but they're all just really just easy, palatable clicks. That does it for game number one. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to talk about game number two. Now, if you are interested in more information from me, there are a few places you can get it. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me. It's where I also tweet out all updates for the show, so make sure to tune in there to get those. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed, where it's just a community of a bunch of really good, really smart people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. I'm talking NBA, MLB, college basketball. The UFL chat is a new one now, and then college football, golf, like we've got everything covered in there, right? And so if you're looking for people to talk DFS with, we're in there talking lineup strategies all day long, and then once the games start, it's sweating it out together, and it's just a blast to be a part of. And I cannot recommend it enough if you're looking for more people to talk DFS. Also, every single college basketball DFS slate, I post an article to my Patreon with my core plays, also included with a write-up why they're my core plays. So not only are you getting the core plays, but you're getting the reasoning why, that are well-researched, well-thought-out takes on all those. So if you are interested in knowing who actually makes my DFS lineups, that would be the place where you could go get that. All right, now let's go ahead and continue with game number two. This one should be a lot of fun, y'all. Should be a lot of fun. It is Duke taking on Alabama. KenPom has this one as Duke 87-81. That is a total of 168 points. That is just absurd. And a big reason why it's absurd because you got two great offenses. They're going to be dragged up to Alabama's tempo, right? Like Duke's efficiency numbers on KenPom are just utterly insane. They rank first in the nation in offensive efficiency, fifth in the nation in defensive efficiency, and they are literally the best team on KenPom since 1999. It's 25 years. It's crazy. Alabama is a really good offensive team. They rank fourth in the nation in offensive efficiency, 27th in defensive efficiency. They rank first in the nation in tempo, too. Duke is 264th, so this is a big-time pace-up spot for Duke. But pretty much when you look at Alabama's scores, they bring opponents up to their pace. They don't really let other teams bog them down a whole lot. They've only scored under 75 points twice all season, one of which was an aberrational road game against Ole Miss. The other one was a game against McNeese where Will Wade was just like, hey, I don't want to get blown out because getting blown out would really tank my metrics. So we're going to play this game super slow. We're not going to get blown out. And Bama, you can have your win, and we'll just take the points we're going to get in KenPom. So anyway, I digress. This game could be a shootout. And here's the interesting thing. I've been watching college basketball all season long. I've been watching every game of this NCAA tournament, and Duke just looks like they're playing a different sport than everybody else because not only do they have the tallest roster around, it's the most NBA talented roster around, and they're really good offensively. They're really good defensively. They're really good at shooting. And the thing that amazes me the most is you watch them play, and they make good decisions. Like they're really smart with the basketball. They don't turn it over. The ball always seems to move where it should go. Defensively, they don't get caught in bad matchups. They don't get caught in bad spots. Like they're just so sound in everything that they do, right? It's hard for me to envision this Duke team losing. If they were to lose, I think it would be to the Florida team that we talked about earlier that is almost on their level in all those things I just said. Or I think Bama is a team that could beat Duke for this simple reason. When Bama goes nuclear from three, like they did against BYU, nobody is beating them. I repeat, if they go nuclear from three, like they did against BYU, nobody is beating them. However, what are the chances of them going nuclear from three like that twice in a row? I don't think it's quite likely. There's a chance, but it's not quite likely because BYU's big strategy, and this was almost like I was literally watching this play out, and I'm like, that's like a high school strategy. That's not going to work against a college team. Is BYU just said, we're going to go under every screen, and we're going to dare you to shoot deep threes, and if you make them, you're going to beat us. If you miss them, we're going to win. And BYU knew that they couldn't hedge, they couldn't trap, they couldn't switch. Like no matter what other ball screen defense they played, they were going to get cooked. And so they just said, you know what, we're going to go under these screens. We're going to make sure you get easy buckets on the drive. And if you want to take and make deep threes, then you can beat us that way. And dang it, Bama beat them that way. right? Duke is not going to play that strategy. Duke switches off ball screens. So you're not going to get that type of defense from Duke that you got from BYU. So I don't think it's likely that we see the nuclear shooting that we saw in that game. So how does that impact us from DFS? Well, Mark Sears is back up to being priced where we're used to Mark Sears being priced because he had 59 DraftKings points in that game against BYU. However, word of caution. So I'm going to give this disclaimer first, though. Mark Sears is still going to make my DraftKings lineups because A, this is the best game on the slate to stack. And B, he's still Mark Sears. He could go off at a moment's notice for no reason, right? Like just randomly. But here's my word of caution on Mark Sears. He does not do well against teams with bigger guards. St. Mary's, 18 DraftKings points. Auburn, 23 DraftKings points. Auburn, 23 DraftKings points. Arkansas, 18 DraftKings points. You guys get the picture, right? Like you just look at some of the teams that they've played that have bigger guards, and Mark Sears generally struggles against bigger guards. So does that mean he's going to struggle in this game? No, it doesn't. But that's the trend. And so he's going to have to get creative and get crafty because Duke's entire roster is 6'5" or taller. Pretty much everybody that plays for Duke in their lineup is 6'5" or taller. There's not a short guy that's going to get put on it. And so he's either going to have to get creative and get crafty like we saw Caleb Love do last, or it's just going to be another game of Mark Sears not doing well against a bigger guard. Now, what that means is it could be a LeBaron Philon game where they put LeBaron Philon on the ball, and he's the guy that's initiating all the offense because he's about 6'4", 6'5". He's taller, and he's also a guy that can, like Mark Sears, rack up a lot of peripheral stats, which are really good in a game stack, really good in different game environments, right? Now, I was hoping we were going to get more of a haircut on price for him at 6,400. Like, I thought he was going to be around like 58, 5,900. But to me, if you're looking at the matchup on paper, LeBaron Philon makes a lot of sense. And if you're wondering, well, Mike, why did he only play 21 minutes against BYU? Well, did you see what the other Alabama guards were doing? Were you going to take Chris Youngblood or Aiden Holloway off the floor? Chris Youngblood, when he hit 5 threes, or were you going to take Aiden Holloway off the floor when he was just absolutely a menace on both sides? Hit 6 threes, put up 36 DraftKings points, right? Like it's not Philon's fault that he only played 21 minutes in that game. Now, let's go ahead and talk about those two guys, right? So Chris Youngblood is like we were talking about on the Thursday show, he's a catch and shoot player that is great in a game stack, is great on a team stack because when he scores, somebody's getting the assist, right? He could very well do that again here against Duke. I don't think it's as likely, but when you go back and watch the game, which I watched live, he wasn't generating a lot of those threes on his own. It was a lot of, I'm open, catch and shoot type of situation. So I do think that Youngblood is a guy that's going to make my player pool because there's a chance he could do it again. Holloway, like Sears, is another smaller guard. However, I do think Holloway has a little bit better wingspan. I think Holloway is a little bit better at dealing with bigger guards because when him and Sears are together, he's kind of more of the 2, and Sears plays more of the 1. At least when you look at who they guard, that's kind of what it looks like to me. So Holloway, 4,400. Are we going to get a repeat of the 36 DraftKings point performance? Probably not. But if we're sticking on this theory that Mark Sears is going to struggle, then it stands to reason that Aiden Holloway is going to be playing a lot of minutes. All right, now let's talk about the forward position for Alabama. So let's start it here. Grant Nelson is going to probably be one of the most highest owned players on this slate. Why? Because DraftKings lowered his price tag. He's played 28 and 25 minutes in the last 2 games. He's put up 26 and 24 DraftKings points, and DraftKings lowered his salary from $5,200, which was a misprice when it was $5,200 against St. Mary's, and it was a misprice when he was $5,200 against BYU, and now he's $4,800 here against Duke. It's just straight up wrong. Like he's going to be popular. Everybody's going to play him because this is just a bad price. Now, if I were to make the counter argument, well, this could go either way, right? I would expect Grant Nelson to be the primary defender on Cooper Flagg. Like literally, if you were to just look at college basketball in general and say, hey, who in all of college basketball can match up athletically with Cooper Flagg, can match up size-wise with Cooper Flagg, like Grant Nelson is probably in the top 10, top 15 of that list. He's actually a little bit taller than Cooper. He moves pretty well for a guy his size. And one thing that Cooper Flagg has done routinely all season long is if you try to guard him with a guard, he's going to back him down. He's going to post up. He's going to use his size as an advantage. If you try to guard him with like this, power forward center type player who's not fleet of foot, he's going to blow right by him. They're going to use him, like they're going to run pick and rolls with Cooper as the roll guy. Like they use him to abuse those two type diametric mismatches, right? Grant Nelson is not either of those. He's kind of like Cooper, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be guarding Cooper Flagg. And I think that could lead to him playing more minutes if he stays out of foul trouble, or it could lead to him getting in big time foul trouble. I think it probably goes one of two ways, but regardless, everybody's going to play him because he's down here at $4,800. Now, if they were to not want to put Grant Nelson on Cooper Flagg, because to me, it's a legitimate strategy of, hey, I don't want my second best offensive player expending all his energy on defense. So if they were to try to take Nelson off of Flagg, what they would probably do is they would probably play Mo Diabate more minutes in favor of the guards like Youngblood and Holloway. Diabate, we've talked about him recent weeks quite a bit. He's an outstanding point per minute fantasy player. He has a high usage rate when he's out there. He's a great rebounder when he's out there. You just never know how many minutes he's going to get. Well, if the argument is, hey, he's a good matchup for Cooper Flagg, then he could play more minutes. And if he plays more minutes, he could put up a ton of fantasy points. So Diabate is a guy that's going to make my player pool. What I would probably recommend doing, I would probably not play Diabate and Nelson in the same lineup. Like if you're making like rules on an optimizer or something like that, probably not Diabate in the same lineup, in my opinion. Cliff Amourier he's been really good in the NCAA tournament, y'all. 26 DraftKings points in 3 straight. They finally figured out how to use him offensively, which is just, hey, I'm going to throw it near the rim. Cliff, go get it and throw it down. And he's a great rebounder, great shot blocker. He's still capped in his minute totals. And here's the weird part about this, though, is Cliff Amourier is a huge guy. He's going to be smaller than Kaman Malawach. So how will he actually deal with being the smaller guy? I don't know. But $5,500, to me, he's a great game stack play. He's just a good play, solid play in general in all formats, because you're getting a guy at $5,500 who can really rack up stats in a hurry. All right. And the other forwards for Alabama, Sherrell, Stevenson, Reed, like they're going to play a little bit. Reed in particular could be one that they could try to guard Cooper with, but I don't see it. Like, if you want to take a shot at him, knock yourself out. Not for me, though. All right, now let's talk about the Duke side. So any discussion with Duke has to start with Cooper Flagg. He is only, and I use the word only quite liberally here, he is only $10,300 on DraftKings. That's still cheap. Like, he's so good. Like, I haven't watched a guy play college basketball in a long time where I'm like, yep, that guy's the number one pick. Yep, he's going to be a great NBA player. Like, it's so obvious, right? Like, the guy is so well-rounded in everything he does. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism, moves like a guard at his size, can shoot the ball, can handle the ball, and he makes the right basketball play. He's so smart when he's on the ball. And also, to add into his usage in this game, he's a great shot blocker. Alabama gets a lot of shots blocked. So you could see Cooper absolutely get 4 or 5 blocks in this game. It wouldn't shock me. I think he is the top play on the slate, regardless of price. If you were just asking me, hey, who's going to score the most fantasy points on the slate, Mike, I would say it's Cooper Flagg, and it's probably not even all that close. So he's going to be very popular, but you can fit him in, right? Like you put him into your lineup, you got 5,600 remaining on DraftKings for the average salary, and he's absolutely fittable. He's just, I can't speak enough as to how good of a play he is. He's going to be in most of my lineups. Now, the rest of the Duke guys, this is where it gets tough, right? Let's talk about the forwards first. So you got Kaman Malawach, the 7-2 center, who got in early foul trouble against Arizona, but still came back and dominated the second half, was a huge lob threat, blocked a few big-time shots at the rim. $5,800, to me, he's super reasonable. We've talked about him all season long, where he's a great fantasy point per minute player. You know his minutes are going to be capped at around 20 to 25, but like in an Alabama game, those 20 to 25 minutes are going to be more possessions up and down than what you're normally getting out of him. So even if he only does play 20 to 25 minutes, his upside in this game is more than it would be in normal games because of the breakneck tempo that Alabama is going to play at. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention with Flagg, he's a great peripheral stat guy. Averages 7 boards and 4 assists a game, and you're going to get him at the breakneck tempo that Alabama plays at, and he should play 35 plus minutes. Like, just cannot speak enough how good of a spot it is for him. Now, the other forwards for Duke, Patrick Ngongba is the backup to Kaman Malawach. He played 12 minutes against Arizona. He's another guy that, like, when he's out there, is a really good fantasy point per minute play. And those minutes are going to go farther against Alabama than they would against normal teams. I don't mind it if you're looking for a punt play. Now, Malik Brown, is an interesting one. So basically, he was healthy and active for the game against Arizona. And the quote was, it was a break glass in case of emergency situation. And well, they broke the glass in the first half when Malawach and Gungbo were both in terrible foul trouble. He came in, played 4 minutes in the first half, put up 4 DraftKings points while I was in there. I don't think that bodes particularly well for him playing a lot of minutes here on Saturday, 2 days after. That's where the situation was just break glass in case of emergency, because injuries typically don't heal that fast. So I don't think he's going to play a whole lot of minutes. Would it shock me if he did? No, but I don't think he's going to play a whole lot. All right, now let's talk about the guards. So Knippel is probably, other than Cooper, the guy that benefits the most from a breakneck tempo like Alabama plays at. You can literally see it in his game log in the Arizona game, because Arizona plays at a great tempo too, right? He played 35 minutes in that game, had 7 rebounds plus assists, which is more than his average, had 20 points, 29 DraftKings points. Like the pace of this game is going to help Knippel be a good fantasy play. I'm normally not on him, especially considering that his price had been inflated from the great games he had without Flag in the lineup. But I think that he's in a pretty good spot, considering that, he's kind of a peripheral stat guy, and this is going to be the ultimate peripheral stat game. Tyrese Proctor, I'm still kind of not going to chase the high, so to speak. Like, pretty much Tyrese Proctor is shooting incredible in this NCAA tournament. He was 13 for 16 heading into the Arizona game, 1 for 4 in that game, so he's still 14 for 20. That's 65% this tournament. I don't think he can continue that. And so I'm going to kind of continue fading him until I think he's due for some positive shooting regression as opposed to negative shooting regression. Sion James is a guy that I'm going to play a lot, though, because basically Sion James is their best on-ball defender, and he does it without fouling. And he's another guy like Knippel that's pretty good in the peripheral stat categories, averages 7 rebounds plus assists per game, and he's going to play every minute if the game's close. Well, almost every minute if the game's close. So Sion James, I think, is one of the most palatable, most solid value plays on the slate at $4,900. With this being a huge pace-up game. Like, honestly, like, you look at it trying to fit Flag into a lineup, right? Like, you got to go to 5,600 average remaining salary. Like, one of the most palatable clicks on the slate to get to like that average higher is to just go ahead and play James at 4,900 and to go ahead and play Grant Nelson at $4,800. Now you're back up to 6,000, the average salary, which is pretty much what you started with before you clicked those 3 guys. Like, I think that's going to be a very common build. I think if you're playing cash games, it's a very solid start to your build. But I think that trio of Flag, Nelson, James is going to be super duper popular. It's how people are going to start their lineups. And so I think that if you're going to start with those 3, you need to find a way to get different elsewhere. All right, that's going to do it for both games, though. So, y'all, we had 2 games. We talked about 15 minutes for each game. That's a pretty thorough breakdown there. So, if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. Please rate and review if you're listening to audio. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it when you guys do that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. These 2 games, if you can't tell from my enthusiasm, I'm really looking forward to it. I think they're going to be some great basketball games, and I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully it's a good DraftKings slate as well. We'll see. But anyway, hopefully I gave you guys some good advice here on this slate. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you do subscribe. Help me close in on my goal of getting to 1,000. We got 45 left. And then also make sure that you stick around for the rest of the NCAA tournament, because we're going to be back talking the Sunday slate as well as every other Final Four, national championship, NIT, college basketball crown, whatever. We're going to be talking college basketball the rest of the year. And then spring and summer, we're going to be getting into our golf content, best ball content for college basketball, or I'm sorry, for college football and NFL, and just going from there. But you'll only be here for all that if you're subscribed. So we're going to go ahead and end it there, y'all. Best of luck to, one last thing. If you're playing Survivor, I actually have 2 very live entries. In the Friday games, I already had, I got 2 that are still alive. I had Michigan State, and one of them tonight. I had Tennessee in the other, so we're advancing on. I haven't used a 1 seed yet, so I've really got some strategy coming up, because I want to play for a Florida Duke national championship game, but I don't know who I want to pick to win it yet. If I'm able to have those 2 entries stay alive, like if I'm able to get them both to the Final Four with Duke and Florida alive, I can middle it, right? But then I got to be right about it being Duke and Florida. So anyway, if you're still in Survivor, love to talk. Like, comments, whatever, reach out to me. I've been having a lot of fun playing Survivor this NCAA tournament. I haven't really done it a whole lot before that. And I'm not talking about the Survivor DraftKings contest, which they did this week for the second weekend. And I was really disappointed that they upped the price tag. That the 640 Survivor that they did for the first weekend, I thought was great. Really well formatted event, really fun event. And I wish that they would have done another one of those as opposed to doing a big dollar one. But the Survivor Pick'ems, that's what I've been really having fun with this year. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and end the episode there. Thank you guys for watching the one to this point. Best of luck to you guys on the Saturday slate. Best of luck to you with your brackets, your DFS lineups, your Survivor, your Pick'em, your parlays, whatever. Best of luck to you guys. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I'll see you next.